Welcome everyone. This is AndresRestart. I am joined by my good friend 𝗛𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 channel is linked in the description below. Welcome to episode 2 for Heated Debate. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, thank you for having me on, Andres. I was listening to Nate from Nintendo Prime. I was listening to his podcast last night, and Andres hinted at his next heated debate episode, and I was like, hey, this sounds like something that I could play a pretty big part in. So I thought I'd be like, hey, let's do a debate on this specific topic. Everyone can probably see the title and thumbnail.
I've been wanting to, I've been wanting the second episode to be Tears of the Kingdom related, but I wasn't sure who I could bring in that I was close to, that we could have like a heated debate and then still be good afterwards, right? But because there's a lot of people that are on my side on this subject, and then there are many others who are not. And so that brings us to what we're doing today. If you're unfamiliar with this series, it's basically where we pick a hot topic in the Nintendo community and we have a heated debate. We have this sort of segment where we take a breather, or we eliminate our restraints in terms of being nice and respectful. Well, I'll probably still be a little respectful, a little nice, but the idea is to get a little heated, a little bit more energetic, and kind of go all out here.
I'm not gonna be nice.
Please don't. Nishwick, I encourage you to be even more mean, even less restrained, even more heated than the prior episode. Because we got some feedback from the prior episode. People seem to like it, so thank you for everyone who said they liked it.
I enjoyed the Metroid Prime 4 discussion, but I was like, when are the big guns coming out?
There was a little bit, but I think we need a little bit more fire this time. So we're gonna try to bring a bit more fire. Please let us know if we brought enough this time. But also, some of you requested that we make it a little bit longer. So I'm extending the timer. I wanted to do it by 5 minutes, but then Nishwick told me he had a lot to say. So I was like, all right, I'm adding 10 more minutes to the timer. So we're going to have a 25-minute timer. And this topic is about whether Tears of the Kingdom is a mistake. What? Well, let's get into it. I'm hitting the timer right now. Love you, buddy, but let's get heated.
Let's go.
All right. So, what is it about Tears of the Kingdom that you think is a mistake, Nishwick Pops? So, like one of the best games last year or ever.
Yeah.
Like, what's the mistake about it?
I want to preface this by saying, I think Tears of the Kingdom is a great game. I think
you know what? Shut up. Shut up. Yeah,
I'm already lying.
You're doing it's a nice thing, but this shit sucks. You're doing that. But anyway,
I'm lying through my teeth right now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think it's a marvel in game design, marvel in game development. When everyone when the game a lot of game developers are coming out and being like, I can't believe this is happening in a video game. I would show everyone. I'd be like, dude, look at this. This has not happened in a video game. But that I have 6 mistakes here. So basically I was telling Andres, I don't think Tears of the Kingdom itself is a mistake. I don't think the idea of the sequel to Breath of the Wild is a mistake. I was very excited for what they were planning with the sequel to Breath of the Wild. But I think there are many mistakes within Tears of the Kingdom as a game itself. First one relates to what I just said about the marvel in game design. I think they focused way too much on the mechanics. And I think they focused way too much on all the ARM abilities. And I think that's great. I think the ARM abilities is what makes Tears of the Kingdom stand apart from every other game I played, especially Breath of the Wild. And what's cool about that is even Breath of the Wild fans are like, oh, I couldn't get into Breath of the Wild, but I can get into Tears of the Kingdom. But that was just one kind of thing. I wanted to know your thoughts on this. Do you think the ARM abilities were too much of an over I wouldn't say overabundance.
I want you to get to the point here. I don't know what you're saying.
Okay. Tell me what I guess the mistake of the ARM abilities being too much of a focus lends into everything else. They took 6 years to develop this game. A lot of that went into the ARM abilities. You see how barren the sky is. You see how like the depths is cool. I'm a depths defender, but you see how there's not as much to do it down there. But then you realize how all that like effort and time and development probably went into making all of this armability stuff work. What if they like developed it a little longer? What if they like had a new overworld? What if they had new things in this game on top of the already like cool arm abilities and stuff like that?
So
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not gonna.
That's my first kind of idea.
Sure.
Arm
So I'm not
abilities
gonna.
is
I
kind of
think
cool.
there's actually merit in what you're saying to an extent, right? Like real talk. Um, I we recently kind of learned about how much effort they put into the physics, right? Like they took the time to make everything in the game physics based. And I think that's kind of why it took so long. That and the pandemic.
Yeah,
Um and so I kind of, I kind of see you from that perspective and there I get it, right? Like it's almost like you kind of wanted Tears of the Kingdom to not be a sequel that takes place in the same world. You kind of like want something fresh and new. And like there is a lot that feels similar. I understand that, but at the same time, I think that Tears of the Kingdom has such a vast world with so much to do. Like it's kind of obnoxious how much there is to do in the game.
yeah. I'm thinking about like other direct sequels though. Like I'm thinking about Majora's Mask is one that comes to mind. It feels unique. It feels like just a new kind of experience.
And it was set in a different
It doesn't
area.
feel like an Ocarina of Time with a new coat of paint on it. Or even like something more contemporary or modern. God of War
And
Ragnarok never I mean to me God of War Ragnarok didn't feel like 2018 with a new coat of paint on it. It felt a lot newer with a lot more new things to do. Tears of the Kingdom did feel new to an extent, but then I realized, especially with the surface being similar, and there are a significant amount of changes to the surface, but the surface being similar made me realize how like, hey, this is just kind of Breath of the Wild with like new abilities added onto it, and the new abilities are really cool. I wouldn't say it's a DLC because there's like new things to do, but it still feels too much like Breath of the Wild. It didn't have that kind of unique identity, you know? So I think that's another mistake it had. Like separating itself significantly from Breath of the Wild. I was hoping the sky would do that. The sky did to an extent until I finished exploring the sky very quickly. I was hoping the depths would as well. And the depths did. I love the depths so much. Like I said, I'm a depths defender. But then again, there's just not as much to do down there as there are in other places in the game. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place because I need to make this heated, but you're still bringing up good points. So, screw you. Tears of the Kingdom is awesome. What are you doing? This is blasphemy. Um, like, yeah. So just there's that. But I don't know. Like I don't feel the same way that you do, right? Like I don't feel it's as repetitive. Do I think there's something to what you're saying? Yeah, I think there's something to what you're saying. Like I kind of wish there was more variety with the Sky Islands, 100%. Do I wish there was more variety in the depths? 100%. But also I could find myself in the depths for hours upon hours and it's fine. It like I find myself lost there. And then the sky as well. And I think there is something to the idea of the emptiness, right? Like it kind of goes back to Breath of the Wild. Like there are parts of Breath of the Wild that are intentionally empty because the negative space kind of adds to the experience if that makes any sense. And I think some of that philosophy does apply to Tears of the Kingdom. So yeah, there is some repetitive stuff. I do agree that it is a criticism that's valid, but I don't think it's something that takes too much away from the game, in my opinion.
I just wish that the gameplay loop felt significantly more different. Cause like when I saw the shrines, I was like, oh, cool shrines. But then I realized the things you do in the shrines are similar. I mean, the shrines were cooler than Breath of the Wild, but I'm like, still shrines. It's still. Here's a little anecdote for my experience with Tears of the Kingdom that made me realize that this was just another kind of Breath of the Wild experience. One of the things that I was most excited for, and this might be like a little bit of a tangent, like a new branching off point into the
We
discussion.
got 17 minutes, so just
Okay,
so
okay,
you know, pace
okay. Thank you
yourself
for letting
here.
me know. Okay, I gotta get to a lot of things, so like this is a good topic to get to. Dungeons and story. Dungeons. When I got to the Wind Temple, I was like, oh, that was so cool getting up to the Wind Temple. Oh, it's a Wind Temple. It's a themed dungeon. Oh, wow. It's a dungeon. It's a temple. Let's go inside. Let's do this. And then I go do the first thing, and then I see the map, and then the thing comes up, and it's 4 dots, and it tells me what to do. My heart literally sank. And I was like, I was that feeling kind of like soured my Wind Temple experience until Kogera came, and I was like, oh, Kogera was peak, Kogera was fun. But when I saw that, I was like, you had this opportunity. Here's another mistake. You had this opportunity to not do that kind of dungeon style, to do something different, to do something by kind of blending in the old and the new to make something like a little more unique, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, right? But I mean, basically, you're just saying you just want something more
I
different.
didn't even want
Well,
traditional dungeons. I wanted like something unique with a little bit of traditional sprinkled in there, but
so,
not like what we got was Divine Beast with a new coat of paint, you
all right,
know?
this is my perspective. Do I think Tears of the Kingdom has the best dungeons in the Zelda series? No, I do not. However, I do think that the dungeons are a vast improvement over what they did in Breath of the Wild for a variety of reasons. One, did have their own unique themings, right? So that made them feel cool. The lead up to the Wind Temple is insanely good. So I don't even like the face you're making right now. Like, okay, so you didn't like the fact that you had to go to these different points on the map.
No, I
Whatever.
like the lead up.
It doesn't mean it sucked. It wasn't what you wanted. And I get that. But listen, the lead up to Wind Temple was insanely awesome. I had no problems with the ship part. Could they have done something even cooler? I agree they could have. But the boss was spectacular. And I think that was actually one of the
Boss
best.
was good.
I would
Kogero was
argue it's one of the
cool.
better Zelda bosses, like period, like for sure. Now the Wind Temple is actually one of my preferred dungeons. I would say it's the second best dungeon in the game. The Lightning Temple, I think they got everything right with the Lightning Temple. At least in terms of the format they were going for. But the point I'm making is simply that, listen, they gave us unique boss fights. They gave us unique themings. They had some interesting lead ups. There was definitely some changes over what they did versus Breath of the Wild. And something else they did that I really appreciated that I think is super underestimated, and not enough people are mentioning this. The dungeons were a part of the overworld. They were not a part of the overworld in Breath of the Wild. They were separate load-ins. You would see the thing moving in, and once you got in, it was a separate thing, and you wouldn't be able to just jump out and move throughout it seamlessly. You can in Tears of the Kingdom. And I think that's actually insane when you really kind of break it down and you factor that along with, like, you can explore the sky, the surface, and the depths all seamlessly along with the dungeons. To me, it's a huge technological achievement. Now, just because it's a technological achievement, that doesn't mean it's necessarily the most fun experience, right? I think that's maybe where somewhat of you're coming from here, because yes, they took a long time with this game because of how much they worked on the physics and the seamlessness of just exploring the different parts of the world. I think Tears of the Kingdom, what they did for this game is going to lead to an even better Zelda game for the next one. But also in terms of like this sameness that you seem to be kind of complaining about, it's kind of what they told us it was going to be, though. It's a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild set in the same world. So the idea is to kind of, if you were a Breath of the Wild fan, hey, this is along those lines. Now, would I have been just as happy, if not more happy, had they gone with a more dramatic departure, kind of like Majora's Mask, or just a totally different Zelda game? Sure. But here's another a little wrinkle, right? we can complain about Tears of the Kingdom because, oh, it's not different enough. But then we go back to Majora's Mask. Yes, amazing game. But guess what? People wanted more about Princess Zelda. We got nothing on Princess Zelda and Majora's Mask. Just, oh, like, oh, yeah, here's the ocarina. Like, there's always going to be complaints no matter what, right? Had we gone a completely new Zelda, people would have been like, oh, but there's so much more potential for the characters from Breath of the Wild. So they gave us more for that. We got to learn more of that, right? So it's kind of like, pick your poison. You know,
I guess,
we got a direct sequel. We got to see more of the story, far more than we get for any other prior Zelda game. You know, like, we got to learn some things.
I have a question for you real quick, because
Sure.
you made me think of something.
We got 12 minutes.
Oh gosh, do you think it was a mistake that you replayed Breath of the Wild before Tears of the Kingdom? Because I stayed away from Breath of the Wild, knowing that the surface was going to be the same. I stayed away from it. I was like, no, I can't. But my memory of playing Breath of the Wild so many years back then made me feel like a lot of this is familiar. The way I'm interacting with it is different, but in the end, it's still like it feels like Breath of the Wild, you know?
Yeah, I actually understand where you're coming from with that. I'll tell you that no, I don't think it was a mistake, because when I replayed Breath of the Wild right before, I realized that Breath of the Wild was my favorite Zelda game, or just favorite game, period. Like, replaying it again, I just re-experiencing the magic of the game. It just made me realize how special it is. Now, that said, I understand where you're coming from, because playing through Tears of the Kingdom, there was a lot of stuff that kind of just felt like speeding through, like with the map. But I think a lot of that
it didn't feel like I was discovering again.
Sure.
It didn't. I mean, the depths. That I understand. That's why I'm a depths defender. The depths felt like I was discovering a whole another side of Hyrule. But the surface, I was like, I've been here, done that. But like, the way I'm interacting with stuff is cool, you know?
No, and I do get that, right? I do get that. There is discovery, right? There's more characters to enjoy. There are some cool things, like being able to ride the dragons. That was a magical moment for me.
That was pretty cool.
I do enjoy the sky stuff. I also, again, I agree there should be more of that. The depths were just so incredible. But I also, again, I understand. I wish there was a little bit more variety down there. And there is variety down there. You just got to kind of look extra hard.
Also,
right?
How much more time do we have?
We got 10 minutes.
Oh boy. I'm going to quick fire some things real quick.
Hit me hard, because I know you got a big point you haven't made
Music
yet.
was a big disappointment for me. And I remember during the reviews, a lot of people were saying the OST is significantly better. It's a lot better. I don't know what people were talking about. Like,
I don't agree with you.
I can only remember like 2 or 3 unique themes from Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe I have to go back and listen to some stuff. But like, the thing is, when we saw the Aonuma presentation and he was doing all those things in the Great Sky Island, I could hear some of the music. I was like, okay, this is the same Breath of the Wild music. They were using it. Maybe this is the older build of the game. Maybe
but didn't you play the Great Sky Island? It's different.
No, like when he ascended up to the top, it had the same like kind of icy cavern music. And I was like,
first off, that was a presentation. When you play the game, yeah, there are parts of the game that have similar music when it's similar areas, sure. But like,
I'm talking more like surface area. Like,
I get what you're saying.
Like,
yeah, there are parts of the game that have the same or very similar music, but it's atmospheric. Like,
It is atmospheric, but I was at least expecting new versions of those tracks, new overworld themes, new horse theme. That's another thing that made me feel that this felt too much like Breath of the Wild, and like.
Right, but hold on a second. Like, I get what you're saying. I recognize that there are parts of the game that sound like Breath of the Wild. Again, it takes place in the same world. It is a direct sequel. It should have those moments. But when you say there's only like 3 songs, that's just wrong, right? Like,
yeah, that's just me not listening to the OST and like only like 3 songs.
And like, if you only remember 3, that's fine, right? But like, I enjoy a lot of the songs in Tears of the Kingdom a great freaking deal. First off, 𝗏𝗏𝗃's theme is just epic, right? But even like each dungeon, every time you get to one of the I forget what the name of them, but you know, like when the checkpoints, right? The little light dot things you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
right? Each time you do that, the music changes. Now, it did that in Breath of the Wild as well, but because of the unique themings of the dungeons, I appreciate it even more this time. So the dungeon
The
music
dynamic themes were
adapts as you
cool,
progress.
but the last version you only get to hear for like 30 seconds until you rush to the boss.
Or unless you take your sweet time.
Yeah.
But going beyond the dungeons and the epic boss themes, right? First off, Gray Sky Island has really cool music. Raru's theme is epic, right? The depths just sound cool. Mipha's theme, there's like a Mipha, there's an area
that's court, right?
Yeah, that is a beautiful place. It's beautiful. Lookout Landing, one of my favorite like new town themes. Like it's so good. Like there's stuff.
Also, I wanted more new towns. I was surprised that Lookout Landing was the only new town. And I mean, like, Kakariko and Hateno had some changes, which was cool, but I was like, Lookout Landing is the only place. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
I agree that I wanted more new towns too.
I think the new music in Tears of the Kingdom was good, but I was a little upset to hear a lot of reuse.
The Dragon Island music, so good.
Yeah, that's yeah.
The factory music, oh come on. There's good stuff.
I wanted to, but before.
And then the end of the game music.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Also, the music in the credits.
That was pretty sick.
Bro, it's so good. But you have to get to that point in the game. So you want to experience
it. Yeah, you have to beat the game first.
Yeah. But also, here's another thing I think it's worth noting, though. You're complaining about the music in Tears of the Kingdom, but I think we should remind ourselves that people are complaining about the music in Breath of the Wild, too.
The thing is, I was a Breath of the Wild music defender, but I think that the biggest thing for me was the new tracks didn't stand out to me as much as I thought they would, and there was a lot of reuse of original Breath of the Wild tracks,
which was expected in my opinion. So you may feel, you're not the only person that feels that way, right?
Yeah.
But to me, also, it's like, so
my final point before we run out of time is
we got 5.5 minutes, so if you only have 1 point left, I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I guess my final point is bringing everything together is Tears of the Kingdom doesn't feel like it has balance to me. And those are the games that I look for nowadays. Games with balance. What I mean by balance is like good gameplay, but also like a good substantial, like engaging story. Maybe a good engaging, like impactful soundtrack as well. And like it just has a balance of everything. I felt like Tears of the Kingdom had like the best gameplay I'd ever seen in a video game.
Bro, Recall blows my mind.
Yeah. Like
Recall blows my mind.
Like all these like cool arm abilities, like the fact that you were saying you can go from the sky all the way down to the depths seamlessly, no loading screens on the Switch, that's insane. But like the story felt half-baked to me. The music had some room for improvement, I guess we can be at that middle ground.
I know you're trying to make a point, but
meet at the middle there.
I think the thing is that we can have a whole debate on just the story.
Yeah,
right?
The thing is with the story, I think the thing that like upset me the most was the inconsistencies from Breath of the Wild, a game that came out 6 years ago. There are inconsistencies with
what?
The 𝗛𝗘𝗔𝗘𝗗 and some other like character relationships in there as well.
Give me a more specific example. Give me a specific example of the 𝗛𝗘𝗘𝗃, because it's been 6 years. Well, okay, in real life, but we know it took about we know there was a handful of years in between because of what's his face, the guy that's the construction leader. What's his name?
Bolson
and his wife had a kid, right? And that kid's already running around talking, being sent over to Gerudo Town, and wasn't even born in Breath of the Wild. So there's been a handful of years since Breath of the Wild, right?
We know,
but it's very obvious that with the towers, they repurposed a lot of the 𝗛𝗘𝗃 technology.
I just thought that there would be actual like lore to get into, not even lore, just simple lines of dialogue where people who are very in charge of something like that, Robbie, Pura, Zelda even would have like
Didn't it
mentioned
come out
something
afterwards in
offhand.
an interview that
Yeah,
someone
I actually wrote that down in my notes. The fact that Fujibayashi, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was just kind of like, oh, it didn't really matter. It just kind of disappeared. And to me, that didn't sound like he hadn't any idea of like where he was going with that. He was just like, oh, it just kind of disappeared. And that was the very like crazy thing about all of this to me. Because the one of the big things is that I was like not even looking forward to, but I was excited for was, hey, this is an opportunity to get to know what happened in between those 6 years, to get to know like what these characters were doing, get a more expanded like storyline, get more expanded lore. This is like the sequel. Like they understood that that was kind of
All
something that
right,
was missing in
so
Breath of the Wild.
I get what you're saying, right? I know a lot of people feel this way. But as someone who likes to theorize about Zelda, I think not telling us everything is part of the magic. Letting us
Yeah,
figure
but
it out and piece it together ourselves is
I,
part
I
of the
think I
magic.
think if there was more significant clues, I think if there was more supporting evidence to come to those conclusions, I think that would make a lot more sense.
I guess, but
Yeah,
also
because
like
in the end it just feels like we're getting like theories out of nowhere. Like, oh, I think this happened because I just think it
okay,
happened.
well here's the
But
other thing though. Throughout the history of Zelda games and people theorizing about them, people have all sorts of ideas left and right about everything. This idea that like this is a new thing where you know they don't have enough consistent details, so everyone has different kinds of theories. No, this has always been a thing. It's always been a thing. Like, I mean, there are people who still like really buy into like with the original Hyrule Warriors and the whole like multiverse thing. Like, and if you want to believe that, it's fine, right? But it's not canon, you know. And my point is simply that if that's how you feel, that's totally fine. Because I think Tears of the Kingdom, the idea behind it, it's what you make of it, right?
yeah,
How you piece the
I
story together, how you perceive it, how you explore about the world, how you choose to like. It is a lot of what you make of it. And some people want to be more. They want their hand held more, and
I
that's
wouldn't
not
say
that's not that's not to be
it's
insulting
not
because I
handheld more.
know. Well,
It's
here's the
more
thing.
like,
Were you going to say this during the show? We got 9 seconds, but I'll give you a little bit of time to make
oh
this point.
shit, no.
Well, were you gonna say it? The thing that you were talking about making a video about? That
Yeah.
timer.
Basically, what I was saying is, not
Timer's done.
specifically this. Okay, basically, I made a tweet which I shared with Andres, and it was basically that like giant tweet, like giant picture of like the greater than symbol. Like one thing is better than the other. I put Future Redeemed is better than Tears of the Kingdom, but in my opinion, maybe not Future Redeemed. I think I just said that personally because I had a better overall experience of Future Redeemed. It brought like three massive games worth of lore together in one final game and answered a lot of questions and all that, right? That to me personally it was a better experience. But I think the better like comparison would be Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is better than Tears of the Kingdom. And the reason I say that goes back to what I said before. It has balance. It has good gameplay. It may not be like you don't do Ultra Hand or anything in that game, but it has a good quality, streamlined gameplay experience. Not only that, but it has a good story as well, which often doesn't overshadow the gameplay experience, and the gameplay doesn't necessarily overshadow the story. But also, not only that, there's like a really huge soundtrack with like not only like good songs to listen to, but the songs tell a story. The songs have its own kind of like narrative structure to it, own kind of leitmotifs, which Tears of the Kingdom had, but it just wasn't as like involved. So I think that balance was there in a game like Xenoblade 3. Another good example I can think of in recent memory was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That game has its own issues, which is its own can of worms. But I think the balance is really there. It has the gameplay, it has a really good combat system, it has a really involved story with really good characters, really good character relationships, really impactful OST, 400 songs throughout the course of that entire game, and the thing about Rebirth is it's an open world game, but it's a more tighter experience. It's not like it is sort of like a Ubisoft kind of formula, but it's done the right way, you know? It's done in a much better way than what something like Horizon or Far Cry or Assassin's Creed does. But that's kind of what I wanted to get at. These games have balance. Tears of the Kingdom was great. It had a better story than Breath of the Wild. It probably had a better OST.
All right, I'm glad you said that, because
balance.
I was actually thinking you were a little insane, because I think listen, right?
It's all about the balance.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, right? You know, we all have different experiences, different perspectives, and I think it's totally valid to like, say, Pikmin 4 more than Tears of the Kingdom, to like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 more than Tears of the Kingdom, to like Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth more so than Tears of the Kingdom. Those are all valid, because everyone can have their own perspectives, feelings, and opinions. But I'm glad you at least acknowledge that it's clear that they improved on the story in Tears of the Kingdom versus Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom does not have awkward dialogue. There are some really powerful, impactful moments. Maybe some people don't like the way it was delivered, but the story is an improvement over Breath of the Wild. And I don't even think the story in Breath of the Wild was bad. It was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. And Tears of the Kingdom was great to me. And listen, I think you know I'm a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 defender.
Yeah.
Right? I love Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I love it. It was the best game of 2022. But the best game of 2023 was Tears of the Kingdom. And for me, right, I know some people are on the whole Baldur's Gate 3 train, but yeah, like, listen, you know, Tears of the Kingdom, it has a good story. Obviously, not everyone likes the way it was told. I do think there's something to the idea of just like how open world should be done. I don't think that they should follow the mold. I haven't played Rebirth yet, so I can't speak on that. But I don't think the Zelda team should follow the mold of what they did in Xenoblade. That's Xenoblade. And I think they're moving in a good direction in Xenoblade. For Zelda, I think they do need to find ways to continue to build on the dungeon idea, continue to build on the technology. Bring us more variety. Right?
I think they just need balance. That's what they need. I think, like, if they think about like Skyward Sword,
you gotta wrap it up.
Sword had balance.
We're way over the timer.
Huh?
We are way over the time.
Oh yeah, we are. But I'm just like casually saying, like, they need balance. They need good gameplay. They need good story. They need they just need like balance. You know, that's what I wish for.
Yeah, I don't really feel I see what you're getting at in terms of balance, I guess, but also like that's in your opinion is balance, right?
Yeah,
you really like the gameplay.
I guess that's just what I look for.
You really like the exploration. But I would argue that the gameplay in Tears of the Kingdom is better. Well, of course, maybe to your point that like Tears of the Kingdom just focuses so much on the gameplay and the exploration that other things are kind of held back. But you know, this idea that like Zelda's always had good story, that's not true, right? Like, yeah, there are good story things, but people have always kind of complained about how the story is told in Zelda. This is not new, right? Now there are people who are going to argue
that was kind of a wake-up call to me last year, because it's not that I was in the mindset, but I always remember people praising Zelda stories, talking about how good Zelda stories were, how impactful the moments were, how good Skyward Sword story was, how good Twilight Princess story was. And then immediately, not even before Tears of the Kingdom's release, because leading up to Tears of the Kingdom, everyone's like, oh, the story's going to be so good. It's got the Zonai, it's got all this, it's going to be so cool, it's going to expand on so many things. And then Tears of the Kingdom came out, and then immediately it was like, oh, Zelda stories were never good. Zelda stories were never impactful. Zelda never had a story. And I was like, what planet was I living on? Where was I for like the past like 15 years?
This is what happens. This is what happens when people share their differing opinions. Some people don't say squat until, you know, the conversation comes up. Listen, I've always been a fan of I've always been a fan of Zelda stories. I've always been a defender of it, but you know, There's no there was no voice acting, right? Like the story wasn't the main thing behind the games. People always wanted more. You can go back. Listen, I think you can go back to pretty much every Zelda game and see some really cool story pieces. That I just think in general people remember Zelda games more fondly after the fact, and I do think that Tears of the Kingdom, after some time, is going to be remembered more fondly. But of course, only time will truly tell. Anyways,
How much overtime did we go?
it's ridiculous. We got to end this thing. It's ridiculous. it's ridiculous. This is 36. It's 36 plus minutes. We got to end this thing. It's over.
I think you cooked me quite a bit though. I was gonna be like, oh, I have this all down. I'm gonna take down AndresRestart.
I mean, I thought you were gonna kick my ass.
Yeah, you
kick my ass.
I kind of.
I mean, maybe you did kick my ass, bro. Maybe people are constantly like, "Yo, Andres, you suck, dude. Like that was terrible."
I feel like my argument sounded better in my head, but I think it was.
I mean, like I said, I think your points are totally valid, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect game.
Yeah, and I also don't think Tears of the Kingdom sucks. Like, it's still like me and some of my friends talk about this. Like, we have issues with the game, but it's like it's still in my top 10 favorite games of all time. Like,
sure.
I've never experienced.
By the way, we're still on the timer. Like,
yeah, no, I just don't think it's great. It's great.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you everyone for listening. Give us some feedback here. Was this one too long, or is it just right? And was this heated enough, or do we need to make it more heated, or is it too heated?
Oh, yeah.
Let me know. But even more importantly, make sure to check out Nish Quick Pops. His channel is linked in the description below, and he may be talking more about this topic in the not so distant future. So
yeah, with a different kind of spin with that teaser at the end, which I kind of teased.
I'm looking forward to it, buddy. Anyways, that's all for now, everyone. Take care.
Later.
Bye.